This story is titled, My Psycho Cousin Falsely Accused Me of a Sexual Assault and Family Disowned Me. Now the truth is out and my family wants me back. Alright, so this all started on a completely normal day. I'd just gotten home from work, grabbed some leftovers, and was settling in to binge a new show. My phone buzzed with a notification, and it was my cousin Megan. Now, Megan and I weren't super close. We'd talk at family events, exchange the occasional joke or comment, but that was about it. So her messaging me was already kind of odd. I opened the message and it just said, "We need to talk." No context, no follow-up. Just those 4 words. My stomach tightened because, let's be honest, "we need to talk" is never a good sign. I messaged back something like, "Sure, what's up?" She replied almost immediately, "Call me." At this point, I was starting to feel weird about the whole thing. I dialed her number and she picked up after the first ring. The first thing she said was, "I know what you did." I sat there blinking at the wall. "What?" I finally said. "I know what you did to me at the party," she said, her voice shaky but cold. Now I'm thinking, what party? What the hell is she even talking about? "Megan, I don't know what you mean. Can you explain?" She let out this sharp breath like she was trying to keep it together. "Don't play dumb. At the barbecue last month, you assaulted me." I swear. It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. "What? Megan, no, I didn't." "What are you saying?" I stammered. "You know exactly what I'm saying," she snapped. "I remember everything. You cornered me near the garage when everyone else was inside. I didn't say anything before because I was scared, but I'm not staying quiet anymore." I was so stunned I couldn't even respond at first. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what she was accusing me of. I barely even spoke to her at the barbecue. I'd spent most of the day grilling with my brother Jake and chatting with my uncle. I hadn't gone anywhere near the garage, let alone cornered anyone. "Megan, I didn't do anything to you," I said, trying to stay calm even though my voice was shaking. "I don't know where this is coming from, but it's not true." "You're lying," she said, her voice breaking. "I remember it. I remember everything." "No, Megan, you're wrong," I insisted. "I didn't do anything to you. Please, just think about this for a second." But she wasn't listening. She kept talking over me, saying how she knew it was me, how she'd been trying to process it, but couldn't stay silent anymore. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. I kept denying it, but it was like shouting into the wind. She wasn't hearing me, and I wasn't getting through to her. Finally, she said, "I'm telling the family. They deserve to know what kind of person you are." And then she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking, and my head was spinning. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to figure out where this was coming from. Why would she say something like that? What could have made her think I'd done something so horrible? I spent the rest of the night pacing around my apartment, completely freaking out. My first instinct was to call my parents and tell them what had just happened, but I stopped myself. What if Megan had already told them? What if they believed her? The thought made me sick to my stomach. The thing is, Megan sounded so convinced, like she genuinely believed I'd done something to her. That's what scared me the most. It wasn't just a random accusation. It was coming from someone who seemed certain they were right. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept checking my phone, half expecting it to blow up with calls or messages from family members demanding answers. But nothing happened. It was almost worse. The silence. I felt like I was sitting on a ticking time bomb, waiting for it to explode. The next day, I went to work, but I couldn't focus. My boss asked me if I was feeling okay, because I looked distracted, but I just shrugged it off. I didn't want to tell anyone about what was going on. Not yet. How do you even begin to explain something like that? When I got home, I finally checked the family group chat, and there it was. A long, emotional message from Megan, saying she needed to speak her truth and that she couldn't stay silent anymore. She didn't name me directly, but the way she worded it, it was obvious who she was talking about. My heart sank. This was worse than I thought. It wasn't just between me and Megan anymore. She'd made it public. And now everyone in the family was going to have their opinions about what happened, whether I said anything or not. I felt trapped. No matter how much I denied it, there'd always be that doubt hanging over me. I wanted to believe it would all blow over, that the truth would come out eventually, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The fallout hit faster than I expected. After Megan's message in the family group chat, everything changed. At first, no one reached out directly to me, which made the silence feel even worse. It was like I'd been exiled without a trial. A few days later, my phone finally rang. It was my mom. I almost didn't answer because I wasn't ready for what I knew was coming. But ignoring it wouldn't help, so I picked up. Michael, she started, her voice unusually stiff. Megan told us what happened. My stomach churned. Mom, nothing happened, I said firmly. She's lying, or she's confused. I didn't touch her. I would never do something like that. She hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. Why would she lie about something like this? She asked, and I could hear the doubt in her tone. I don't know, I shot back, frustration creeping into my voice. But I'm telling you the truth. I didn't do it. We don't know what to think, she said, her voice breaking a little. Megan's upset, and it's serious. Exactly, I said. It's serious. That's why you need to believe me. You know me, Mom. I'm your son. Why would I ever do something like this? She didn't answer. Instead, she mumbled something about needing time to process everything and hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. If my own mother couldn't believe me, what chance did I have with the rest of the family? The silence from everyone else didn't last long. The next day, my aunt, Megan's mom, called, except she wasn't there to hear my side. You disgusting piece of garbage, she hissed as soon as I answered. I can't believe I ever let you near my daughter. Aunt Lisa, I didn't. Don't you dare try to deny it. She cut me off. Megan remembers everything, and I believe her. You're a predator, Michael. Don't think you're going to weasel your way out of this. She hung up before I could get another word in. I sat there stunned, trying to process the sheer hatred in her voice. This was my family. People I'd grown up with. People I'd trusted. And now they were treating me like a criminal. I thought maybe my brother Jake would be different. We were close. He had to know I wasn't capable of something like this. So I called him, hoping he'd have my back. When he answered, he sounded uncomfortable. Hey man, he said. What's going on? You tell me, I replied. Megan's out here accusing me of assault, and no one seems to care whether it's true or not. He sighed. Look, it's complicated. Megan's saying one thing, you're saying another. I don't know what to believe. You don't know what to believe? I snapped. Jake, you were with me at the barbecue most of the time. You know I didn't do anything. Yeah, but I wasn't with you the whole time, he said hesitantly. And Megan seemed pretty shaken up when she told everyone. Why would she make something like this up? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you're just going to sit there and let her destroy my life? I asked. I'm not taking sides, he said, which felt like the biggest betrayal of all. I hung up on him. If Jake couldn't even stand up for me, what was the point? Over the next week, things only got worse. My phone blew up with messages and calls, most of them hostile. My uncle, who used to invite me over to watch football every Sunday, sent me a text saying, You're not welcome in my house anymore. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly chiming in, calling me every name in the book. The worst part was the people who stayed silent. My parents didn't reach out again, and neither did Jake. It felt like everyone had already decided I was guilty. I'd walk into work every day feeling like I had a target on my back, even though no one there knew what was happening. My boss asked if I was okay because I looked distracted, but what was I supposed to say? At one point, I thought about reaching out to Megan directly. Maybe if I could just talk to her, I could figure out why she was doing this. But every time I picked up my phone, I hesitated. What would I even say? She'd already made up her mind, and so had everyone else. By the end of the month, I stopped trying to defend myself. It was exhausting, fighting a battle where no one was even listening. I pulled away from everyone. Family gatherings, group chats, even phone calls. If they didn't want me around, fine. I wouldn't force it. But the isolation was brutal. These were people I'd grown up with, people I thought I could count on. Now, it felt like I didn't have anyone in my corner. I kept telling myself it wasn't my fault, but that didn't make it hurt any less. At night, I'd lie in bed replaying conversations over and over in my head. I couldn't stop wondering, how did it come to this? How did one accusation destroy everything? After cutting myself off from my family, I thought things might get easier. I mean, how much worse could it get when I was already the black sheep in everyone's eyes? But the truth is, the silence was almost harder to deal with than the accusations. No calls, no texts, just this emptiness where my family used to be. At first, I kept holding on to this small hope that someone would reach out and say, "We believe you," or "We made a mistake," but no one did. It became clear that if I wanted to get past this, I'd have to figure out how to do it on my own. So, I focused on work. I took on more hours, volunteered for extra projects, anything to keep my mind occupied. It worked during the day, but nights were harder. I'd sit on the couch, scrolling through my phone, and catch myself opening the family group chat, even though I knew nothing good would come from it. It was like picking at a scab. You know it's going to hurt. but you can't help yourself. And of course, they were still chatting away like nothing happened. They'd share pictures from dinners and outings, everyone smiling and having a great time. It was like I didn't exist anymore. I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need them, but seeing those photos stung more than I wanted to admit. Amy, my girlfriend, was the only person keeping me sane during all this. She never once doubted me, not even for a second. One night, after I spent an hour ranting about how unfair everything was, she sat me down and said, "You can't keep letting this control your life. They've already taken enough from you. Don't give them any more." She was right, of course, but knowing something and doing it are two very different things. I decided to make some changes, starting with my routine. I joined a gym, not because I wanted to get ripped or anything, but because I needed a way to burn off all the frustration I was carrying around. Punching a bag felt a lot better than stewing in my anger, and after a while it even started to clear my head a bit. I also reconnected with some old friends I hadn't seen in years. At first it felt weird reaching out after so much time, but they didn't seem to care. One of them, Ryan, invited me out for a drink, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed. Like, really laughed. It was a reminder that not everyone in my life saw me as the villain. Still, moving on wasn't as easy as I'd hoped. The accusations were always in the back of my mind, like this weight I couldn't shake. I'd replay conversations with Megan, my parents, Jake, and wonder if there was something I could have said or done differently. It was exhausting, and no amount of gym sessions or hangouts with friends could completely erase it. One night, I was scrolling through Instagram when I came across a post from Megan. It was a picture of her with a few other family members at some dinner. My parents were there. Jake was there. Even my aunt and uncle. Everyone was smiling, laughing, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. I sat there staring at the picture, and for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt angry. Angry that they were all fine while I was left picking up the pieces. Angry that Megan, the person who started all this, was still being celebrated while I was stuck on the outside. That anger was a wake-up call. I realized that as much as I wanted to move on, I was still letting them control me. Every time I looked at that group chat or scrolled through social media, I was giving them power over my life. So, I decided to stop. I muted the group chat, unfollowed a bunch of family members on social media, and focused on building a life that didn't include them. It wasn't easy. I mean, how do you just turn off years of love and loyalty? But I had to try. Amy and I started making plans for the future, talking about moving to a new city where we could really start fresh. I didn't know if we'd actually go through with it, but just having that conversation felt like progress. I also started journaling, which sounds cheesy, but it helped. Writing down everything I was feeling gave me a way to process it without letting it eat me alive. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. Moving on wasn't a straight path. Some days I'd feel like I was making progress, and other days I'd feel like I was right back at square one. But I kept reminding myself of what Amy said. They've already taken enough. I wasn't going to let them take any more. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could finally leave this whole mess behind me. It had been months since I cut ties with most of my family, and I was starting to feel like I was finally finding my footing again. Life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. Then, one random Tuesday afternoon, I got a notification on my phone, a message request on Facebook. I almost ignored it, assuming it was spam, but when I glanced at the name, my heart skipped a beat. It was Megan. My hands froze for a second. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open it. Part of me thought it was just going to be more nonsense, maybe some guilt tripping or a half-baked attempt to spin the story further. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The message was short. Way too short, considering everything that had happened. I need to apologize. I made a mistake, and I'm sorry for everything I put you through. I read it a few times, making sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My first reaction wasn't relief or even happiness. It was anger. That was it? After all the damage she caused, after turning my family against me, this was what she had to say? I didn't reply right away. I showed the message to Amy that night, and her reaction mirrored mine. She thinks a few words can make up for what she did, she said, crossing her arms. She didn't even explain herself. What kind of apology is that? She wasn't wrong. Still, I needed to know more. After sitting on it for a couple of days, I finally responded, "Why now? What changed?" Megan replied almost instantly, "I've been thinking about everything, and I realized I was wrong. I thought it was you because I couldn't remember much from that night, but I've been working through some things, and I realized I made a mistake. I'm sorry for blaming you. Reading that made my blood boil. She thought it was me? That was her excuse for accusing me of something so serious. Something that completely wrecked my relationship with my family? I wanted to scream at her, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. But I held back. Instead, I replied, "Do you even understand what you've done? I lost my family because of your accusation. People who were supposed to trust me turned their backs on me. You saying sorry doesn't erase all of that." She read it but didn't reply right away. Hours passed, and when she finally did respond, her message was weak. "I know I messed up. I didn't think it would get this bad. I really am sorry." That was it. No real accountability, no acknowledgement of the depth of the damage she'd done. Just a shallow, "I didn't think it would get this bad." I showed her response to Amy, who rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. "She's not sorry for what she did," she said. "She's sorry for how it made her look." She was right. Megan's apology wasn't about making amends. It was about clearing her conscience. She wanted to move on without facing the mess she'd left behind. I decided I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. My last message to her was blunt. "I appreciate you admitting you were wrong, but this isn't something I can just forgive and forget. You've caused so much harm, and I'm the one who's been paying for it. I need time to figure out what I want to do with this." She didn't reply, just left me on read. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. Megan had never been the type to stick around when things got uncomfortable. The apology didn't feel like a victory. If anything, it left me more frustrated. Sure, the truth was out now, but what did that change? My family still doubted me for months, still treated me like I was guilty without even hearing me out. Megan's apology didn't erase the pain or repair the relationships I'd lost, but it was something. A small crack in the wall that had been built around me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Update 1. After Megan's apology, word started to spread through the family. I didn't announce it or anything. Someone else must have shared it. Maybe Megan told my parents, or maybe it came up in one of their group chats that I was no longer a part of. Either way, it wasn't long before the calls and messages started rolling in. The first one came from my mom. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Hey, Michael," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "I heard what Megan told you. I don't know how to say this, but I'm sorry. We're sorry. We should have believed you." Hearing her say that didn't bring the relief I thought it would. Instead, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, frustration, and maybe a little hope. "Why didn't you?" I asked, my tone harsher than I intended. She hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. "I don't know," she finally said. "Megan seemed so certain, and we didn't think she'd make something like that up." "You didn't even give me the chance to explain," I shot back. "You just assumed the worst." "We messed up," she admitted. "I don't expect you to forgive us right away, but we want to make things right." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just told her I needed time to think about it and ended the call. The next one came from Jake. I wasn't as generous with him. I ignored the first 2 calls before finally picking up the third. "Hey," he said, sounding nervous. "Look, I know I messed up. I should have backed you up. I didn't know what to do." "You knew I didn't do it, Jake," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You were with me for most of that party. How could you just stand by and let this happen?" "I was scared, okay?" he blurted out. "I didn't want to get involved and make things worse. I thought if I stayed out of it, it would blow over." I laughed bitterly. "Well, it didn't blow over, did it? It blew up my whole life." He apologized again, over and over, but I didn't let him off the hook easily. He'd been my brother, someone I thought I could count on, and he chose to stay silent when I needed him most. I told him I'd think about whether I even wanted to rebuild our relationship, and he seemed to understand. The hardest call came from my dad. We'd barely spoken since the accusation, and the distance between us felt impossible to bridge. When he called, he got straight to the point. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Yeah, you do," I replied, not bothering to sugarcoat it. "I don't know why I doubted you," he admitted. "I guess I was scared that Megan might be telling the truth. I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't know what to think." "Do you even realize how much you hurt me?" I asked. "You're my dad. You were supposed to have my back, and you didn't." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'll never forgive myself for that." It wasn't the perfect apology, but it felt more genuine than the others. I told him I wasn't sure if I could move past what happened, but I appreciated him owning up to it. Rebuilding those relationships has been slow. Some family members didn't even bother to apologize. They just acted like nothing had happened and expected me to do the same. I didn't. If they weren't willing to acknowledge the harm they'd caused, I wasn't interested in pretending everything was fine. Amy has been my rock through all of this. She keeps reminding me to set boundaries and not let guilt push me into forgiving people who don't deserve it. It's okay to take your time, she told me one night. You don't owe them anything. She's right. As much as I want to fix things, I know I can't rush it. Some relationships may never go back to the way they were, and that's okay. Megan never reached out again after her apology. And honestly, I prefer it that way. Her message didn't feel like a step toward fixing things. It felt like a way for her to clear her conscience. I've accepted that I may never fully forgive her, but at least I have the truth now. Slowly, I've started letting a few family members back into my life. I've been cautious, testing the waters with small conversations and meetups. Some are genuinely trying to make amends, and I appreciate that. Others, well, let's just say they've shown me who they really are. Update 2. Hey everyone, I wanted to give an update because, well, things have taken a turn, and let's just say karma finally came knocking on Megan's door. After months of silence following her weak apology, I wasn't really keeping tabs on her. I unfollowed her on social media and was doing my best to move on with my life. But, as it turns out, I didn't need to keep tabs. Word found its way to me anyway, courtesy of the family grapevine. Apparently, Megan's life has been falling apart lately, and honestly, I'm not even surprised. It started with her losing her job. From what I heard, she was let go for some conduct issues. The details are murky, but my cousin Ryan, who I've reconnected with, by the way, told me it had something to do with her spreading rumors about a coworker. Sound familiar? Not long after that, Megan had a huge falling out with her mom, Aunt Lisa. Lisa, who had been Megan's biggest supporter during her accusations against me, finally hit her breaking point. Megan was living with her rent-free after her job loss, and apparently she wasn't doing much to help out around the house. From what I've been told, there was a massive blow-up where Lisa accused Megan of being ungrateful and selfish, and Megan accused Lisa of always taking things too far. Here's the kicker. Lisa kicked Megan out. Yep, the same aunt who called me a disgusting piece of garbage is now refusing to let her own daughter stay in her house. Irony, huh? It doesn't end there. Megan's personal life has also been a mess. She recently broke up with her boyfriend after he found out she'd been lying to him about, well, pretty much everything. I don't know all the details, but from what I heard, she'd been telling him she was working on exciting career opportunities, while actually unemployed and borrowing money from family members to keep up appearances. Oh, and about those family members? They're starting to see her for who she really is. Ryan told me that a lot of the cousins who initially backed her during the accusations have distanced themselves after seeing how toxic she can be. I guess it's easier to believe someone's lies until you're on the receiving end of them. And as for my parents, they've been oddly quiet about the whole thing. My mom mentioned Megan's situation in passing during one of our recent conversations, saying, she's going through a lot right now, but there wasn't much sympathy in her tone. I think even she's starting to realize that Megan isn't the innocent victim she claimed to be. Do I feel bad for Megan? Honestly, not really. She made her choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. She lied about me, turned my family against me, and caused years of pain that I'm still working to move past. Karma catching up with her doesn't make me happy, but it does feel justified. The one thing I've learned through all of this is that actions have consequences. Megan might have gotten away with her lies for a while, but the truth always finds a way to come out. And when it doesn't pull any punches. For now, I'm focusing on myself and the relationships that matter. I've rebuilt some trust with my parents and Jake, though it's a slow process. Amy and I are still going strong, and we've been talking more seriously about moving to a new city for a fresh start. As for Megan, I'm keeping my distance. I've done enough cleaning up after her messes, and I'm not about to get dragged into another one. If she ever decides to really own up to what she did, not just to me, but to everyone else she's hurt, maybe I'll consider having a conversation. Until then, I'll let karma do its thing. Thanks for sticking with me through this. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you don't need everyone's approval to live a good life. You just need the right people in your corner.